Hello everybody, so here is Black Angel again, and I'm here with a video about what socionics defines as the vulnerable function. So whenever we're talking about the vulnerable function, we're talking about the function that is the opposite of the third function. So for example, an INTP would have tertiary introverted sensing, which means his or her vulnerable function would be extroverted sensing. So the vulnerable function is the point of greatest weakness of the person. It's that thing that we do not pay attention to and we do not develop. Obviously, to an extent, we do use that function, but it's such a little extent that it's always perceived as a weakness. An example on INTPs, for example, they are introverted sensing tertiary and extroverted sensing vulnerable. So an INTP might say, am I strong because I know my body in detail and I know exactly what my limits are and what I can take and what I cannot, physically speaking, or am I weak because I cannot defend myself from physical attacks from other people? This is something that an INTP might say, and the point here is that they're never going to do that step that takes them to defend themselves physically, but they will rather attempt to increase their knowledge of their body, their understanding of their body. And this is actually what they should be doing. Because whenever we try to work with the vulnerable function, we are going to experience a lot of distress and we're going to become kind of neurotic. So an INTP that tries to go to a course of self-defense, for example, is going to become very neurotic and be so outside of his habitat that they're going to be always stressed out and completely out of their mind. What helps an INTP? Well, INTPs are, well, since I'm on this topic, an INTP is a very mental, not mental, I think mental is the wrong word. It has a very negative connotation, at least. What I'm talking about is a very cerebral. Yeah, that's what I mean. A very cerebral type. They're constantly thinking about stuff. They're constantly working on stuff. So what helps an INTP is when an ESFJ is doing something in the kitchen, for example, while the INTP is studying or doing stuff, and the ESFJ suddenly goes like, oh, come here, just cook this thing and I want you to taste it. And that doesn't bother the INTPs, actually. I've seen this scene happen in a household, for example. And that doesn't bother the INTP, but it rather gives him that tiny bit of curiosity to go check and see, because they're kind of gluttons in a way, and they're very curious and they need these pauses, these breaks. Their mind doesn't stop anyway, it keeps working on what they were working. They're very relaxed and calm individuals anyway, and they do not overreact to that kind of invitation from someone they care about and that cares about them. And this is something that helps their introverted sensing. So it strengthens their self-esteem. So the idea of being called to taste something new and to be considered savant in this area makes them feel good about themselves. So this is one example about INTPs. I could talk about another example. What can I talk about? Let's see, ISFJs. ISFJs are extrovert thinking vulnerable and introvert thinking tertiary. So an ISFJ or an INFJ also might say, am I stupid because I do not know the math formulas to understand the golden ratio, or am I intelligent because I don't need to actually know the mathematic formulas to understand the concept behind the golden ratio? This is something that a TI tertiary might say. And what matters for a TI tertiary is to not focus on the factual side of the coin, but rather to keep working on their understanding of things. And here is where, back to the ISFJ example, an ENTP can help an ISFJ, because the ENTP, again, a very cerebral type, is going to challenge the ISFJ's knowledge of the world with completely new and out-of-the-box ideas and thoughts and conceptions, so that the ISFJ is constantly challenged to understand, to figure out what the hell is going on with the ENTP's mind. And that's where the two types help each other. For an ESTP and an INFJ, I'm not sure how that works actually, even though I should, because it's actually what I'm more experienced with. But I don't know exactly how that works. I haven't pinpointed yet what specifically does the trick in my case. So I'm not going to touch on that. What else can I say? Another example to see a vulnerable function in work, and then I think we almost made them all. INTJs. INTJs are extroverted feeling vulnerable and introverted feeling tertiary. So an INTJ might say, am I cold-hearted because I cannot stand cuddles and physical manifestations of affection, or am I empathetic because I understand the depth of feelings of others and I can empathize with that, sympathize with that. That's something an INTJ might think. And their path of growth and their path of self-esteem is to actually think about their personal feelings and the depth of feelings of others, sympathize with others and empathize with others about their feelings, and not worry so much about the greater good or external manifestations of affection and sharing others' moods and so on. An INTJ, and here I'm opening a parenthesis, being an I dominant, is perfectly capable of understanding another person's state of mind, but they're not able to mirror their moods and emotional state. So if a person is extremely happy, an extroverted feeling dominant type is going to show enthusiasm even if they're depressed, for example, whereas an INTJ will keep depressed if they are depressed and will show enthusiasm if they are enthusiastic about something that belongs to them. So they might feel that they're insensitive because of that, but they also recognize to themselves so that they cannot empathize with strong negative feelings of other people, for example, that are held inside. So they can see when someone is in a negative state of mind because they're hurting in some way. So they can be empathetic in this way, and they can sympathize with others. So their path of personal growth is to learn and to work on this thing, and that's where ESFPs actually help them. The ESFP is the kind of type that when they're happy, everybody has to be happy, and when they're sad, everybody has to be sad. And it's not something they show blatantly externally. It's more of an emotional pressure that they create in the atmosphere around them, and an INTJ is perfectly capable of recognizing this atmosphere, and by empathizing with the ESFP, they help the ESFP with their struggle, and they support the ESFP and their self-esteem growth, obviously. And the ESFP gets the attention they need, because the ESFPs are a type that requires a lot of attention. I think this quite explains it, so I will close this here and I will talk to you soon. Bye.